You've convinced yourself that love is a lottery, a game of chance where your number never gets called. But what if the odds were never random? What if every heartbreak, every ghosting, every relationship that dissolves into resentment was engineered by a part of your mind you've never dared to confront? This isn't about bad luck or flawed partners. This is about the subconscious scripts written in the ink of childhood trauma, scripts that force you to reenact the same emotional catastrophes with surgical precision. Freud called it repetition compulsion, the psyche's addiction to replaying unresolved wounds until they're mastered. But mastery never comes. Instead, you become a prisoner of patterns you can't name, drawn to partners who can't love you in ways your younger self was never loved. The real tragedy isn't your failed relationships, it's your unconscious allegiance to them. Every time you choose someone emotionally unavailable, every time you provoke a fight to confirm your deepest fear of abandonment, you're obeying a mandate older than your first kiss. Your mind isn't seeking love, it's seeking resolution. It wants to return to the original wound, the parent who withheld affection, the caregiver who weaponized silence, and rewrite the ending. But the unconscious doesn't speak in logic. It speaks in echoes. And until you decode those echoes, you'll keep mistaking trauma's fingerprint for destiny's hand. The cycle feels inevitable because it is. You've been conditioned to conflate pain with intimacy, distance with desire. Your earliest bonds, those primal relationships with caregivers, etched a blueprint of love into your nervous system. If love was earned through silence, you'll seek partners who demand your suppression. If love was a transaction requiring perfection, you'll morph into a chameleon, desperate to earn affection through performance. These aren't choices. They're compulsions. The unconscious doesn't want happiness, it wants familiarity. And nothing is more familiar than the emotional dynamics of childhood, even when they were suffocating. This is why insight alone fails. You can journal, therapize, and affirm yourself into oblivion. But the deeper currents of your psyche remain untouched. The unconscious doesn't care about your epiphanies. It cares about survival. Reenacting old wounds is a perverse form of control, a way to stay loyal to the first love that shaped you, even as it destroys you. You call it self-sabotage, but it's deeper than that. It's loyalty. It's the terrified child within who'd rather die in a known hell than risk an unknown heaven. Until you confront how your earliest bonds programmed your attraction matrix, you'll keep drifting toward the very partners who'll confirm your deepest belief. You are unworthy of love as you are. Freud's most unsettling revelation was this: the repressed is the unconscious is the repressed. Every relationship you enter is haunted by the unresolved dynamics of your first attachments. The parent who criticized becomes the partner who nitpicks. The caregiver who abandoned you becomes the lover who leaves. This isn't coincidence, it's transference. Your unconscious superimposes the past onto the present, forcing new partners to play roles written decades before they entered your life. The compulsion to repeat is not a flaw, but a function. Freud argued that trauma doesn't fade, it demands encores. When a child's needs go unmet, the psyche fossilizes those needs into cravings. As an adult, you don't seek partners who fulfill you. You seek partners who reignite the ache of those unmet needs, offering a chance to finally conquer them. But here's the trap. The unconscious cannot distinguish past from present. It doesn't want resolution. It wants repetition. Every toxic relationship is a seance, summoning the ghosts of childhood to haunt your present. And until you exorcise those ghosts, you'll keep mistaking their whispers for your own desires. The loop begins in silence. Not the quiet of an empty room, but the silence of the unconscious, the kind that hums beneath your awareness, orchestrating every attraction, every spark of chemistry, every impulse to flee. This is the machinery of repetition compulsion, a psychic algorithm designed to trap you in cycles of suffering that feel both inevitable and inexplicable. To understand it, you must first abandon the myth of free will in love. Your desires are not yours. They are relics. Every partner who draws you in, every dynamic that feels magnetic, is a cipher for a relationship far older than your dating history. The bond that first taught you how to love and how to lose. Repetition, compulsion, thrives on paradox. It convinces you that this time will be different, that the partner who mirrors your parents' emotional absence will finally stay, that the relationship patterned after childhood chaos will somehow breed peace. But the outcome is pre-written. The unconscious isn't seeking change, it's seeking confirmation. It wants to prove that love is conditional, that abandonment is inevitable, that you are fundamentally unworthy, not because these truths are real, but because they are familiar. Familiarity is the unconscious's oxygen. It would rather suffocate in a known hell than gasp for air in an unknown paradise. Examine the loop's architecture. It starts with a trigger, a glance, a laugh, a subtle gesture that resonates with an ancient blueprint. Your nervous system ignites, not because of who this person is, but because of who they represent. The dopamine rush you mistake for chemistry is actually recognition, a deep, cellular sigh of, "There you are, I've known you forever." This isn't love. It's resonance with trauma. The relationship unfolds as a reenactment, a subconscious theater where you play both victim and perpetrator. You become the parent who withheld, the child who pleaded, the dynamic that could never be resolved. The fights, the disconnections, the obsessive ruminations, they're not disruptions of the loop. They're its liturgy. To break the cycle, you must first confront its most insidious lie, that repetition is healing. Freud argued that we replay traumas to master them, but the unconscious has no interest in mastery. It seeks to preserve. Each reenactment is a ritual to keep the original wound alive, to honor its grip on your identity. The partner who ghosts you isn't a person. They're a placeholder, a shrine to the first love that taught you to equate pain with devotion. You don't miss them. You miss the primal ache of proving your worth to someone who couldn't see it. The loop's power lies in its invisibility. You'll dissect dates, analyze texts, and diagnose partners, never realizing the problem lives in the blind spot of your own psyche. This is why self-help fails. You can't think your way out of a pattern engineered to bypass the thinking mind. The loop is a closed circuit. Every analysis, every vow to do better, becomes another twist in the wire. To escape, you must shift the fight from your conscious mind to your unconscious. Stop trying to choose better partners. Start excavating why you're compelled to repeat worse ones. Ask yourself, what am I trying to resurrect? Every loop is a funeral for the same unmet need. The parent's approval, the caregiver's presence, the childhood cry that went unanswered. Your relationships are not connections. They're seances. You're not dating a person. You're bargaining with a ghost. Transference is not a flaw. It's a haunting. A silent, spectral force that drags the past into your present, grafting the faces of long-gone caregivers onto every new lover. Freud called it the replacement of a former object by a contemporary one, a clinical phrase that belies its visceral power. You don't fall in love, you resurrect. Every attraction is a seance, summoning the unresolved dynamics of your earliest bonds into the bedroom, the arguments, the whispered promises. Your partner isn't a blank slate, they're a screen, and projected onto them, in high-definition agony, are the needs, rages, and hungers your inner child still carries. Here's how it works. Your unconscious, desperate to reconcile the past, appoints every new partner as a stand-in for the parent who shaped your blueprint of love. The mother who was emotionally absent? She lives in the partner who texts back hours late, reigniting that primal ache to be chosen. The father who demanded perfection? He smirks in the lover who critiques your ambitions, turning praise into a currency you're forever scrambling to earn. You call this chemistry, but it's closer to necromancy. The traits that draw you in, the aloofness, the intensity, the unavailability, are not accidents. They're echoes. Your psyche is not seeking a partner. It's seeking a time machine. This is why love feels so eerily familiar, even when it's new. The nervous system doesn't recognize the present. It scans for patterns. When your date's laughter hits a certain pitch, when their silence stretches a specific length, your body stiffens or softens in response to a script written decades ago. You're not reacting to them. You're reacting to the ghost your unconscious insists they host. The fights you rehearse, the vulnerabilities you withhold, the parts of yourself you amplify or mute. These are not choices. They're rituals. Performances for an audience of one. The parent whose approval still dictates your worth. Step 1. Spot the specter you're chasing. To dismantle transference, you must first name its architect. Ask yourself, whose absence lives in my attractions? The partner you idealize isn't a person. They're a patchwork of unmet childhood needs. The one who feels like home isn't a sanctuary. They're a museum. A curated exhibit of the love you were conditioned to accept, complete with the same cracks in the foundation. This is transference's cruel trick. It disguises repetition as revelation, making you mistake the reenactment of old wounds for the thrill of new connection. Freud warned, the unconscious never desires anything new. It wants only to rewrite the past with better props. But here's the trap. You cannot heal a childhood wound through an adult relationship. The parent who failed you is not hiding in your partner's body. The closure you seek will not come from making this lover love you better. It will come only when you stop conflating the two, when you see the specter superimposed on their flesh and choose, ruthlessly, to dissolve the illusion. This demands a brutal honesty. It requires you to interrogate your attractions like a crime scene. What familiar pain does this person promise? Which ancestral hurt does their presence soothe? Every time you feel drawn to someone, you must autopsy the pull. Is it rooted in their essence, or in the ghost they've been assigned to play? Transference thrives in the unexamined. Shine a light on its mechanics, and the spell begins to fray. The work is not to stop projecting, but to become aware of the projection in real time. To catch yourself grafting your father's disapproval onto your partner's distracted gaze. To notice when you're begging your lover to validate you in ways your mother never could. This is how you exorcise the ghost, not by fleeing the haunting, but by turning to face it. By whispering, mid-embrace, I know who you really are, and you are not them. Your unconscious doesn't fight fair. When childhood wounds threaten to surface, it deploys psychological mercenaries, defense mechanisms, to keep the truth buried. These are not flaws. They're survival tactics forged in the fires of early trauma and perfected over decades of repetition. To dismantle your self-sabotage, you must first unmask the 3 Freudian defenses poisoning your love life: projection, reaction formation, and displacement. Each serves one brutal purpose: to protect the psyche from truths it cannot bear by redirecting pain onto safer targets. Projection is emotional alchemy. It transforms your own intolerable feelings into your partner's perceived flaws. The shame you carry for needing too much as a child becomes their neediness. The guilt you feel for resenting a parent's control becomes their suffocating demands. You accuse them of the very vulnerabilities you exile within yourself, turning intimacy into a hall of mirrors. Every criticism you hurl, "You're too clingy, you're manipulative," is a confession. A silent scream of, "I hate the parts of me you force me to see." Step 2. Name your tactic. Own its trigger. When you feel repulsed by a partner's trait, ask, "What extant part of myself does this mirror?" Reaction formation is the psyche's theater. It convinces you to act opposite to your true desires, lest they expose you to old dangers. You crave vulnerability, but a parent's rejection taught you to equate openness with annihilation. So you armor yourself in indifference. You ice over when they reach for you, mocking their neediness while your inner child starves. This is the defense of inverted hunger. Loving becomes fearing, wanting becomes despising. You don't hate their tenderness. You hate how it ignites a longing you were punished for having. The colder you act, the hotter the buried need burns. Name your tactic. Own its trigger. When you feel contempt for a partner's vulnerability, ask, "What forbidden desire am I trying to kill?" Displacement is the art of misdirection. It takes the rage you dare not aim at the original culprit, the parent who failed you, and fires it at safer targets, partners, friends, yourself. A lover's minor slight becomes a nuclear offense because it's not about them. It's about the father who never showed up, the mother who never listened. You scream about dishes left in the sink, but the real crime is decades old. Displacement keeps you fighting proxy wars, draining your energy in battles that leave the true enemy untouched. Name your tactic. Own its trigger. When a partner's flaw enrages you, ask, "Who does this person remind me not to blame?" These defenses share a fatal logic. They make the present pay for the past. Every time you project, invert, or displace, you hand your childhood ghosts new flesh to inhabit. Your relationships become exorcisms where no spirit is ever cast out, only recycled. The defenses feel like protection, but they're slow suicide. They sever you from the truth of your hunger, ensuring no partner can ever reach the raw core of your need. To disarm them, you must trace their lineage. Every defense mechanism is a fossil, a preserved response to ancient emotional earthquakes. Your coldness isn't cruelty. It's the survival strategy of a child who learned warmth led to abandonment. Your rage isn't pettiness. It's the trapped scream of a kid forbidden to criticize a parent. These tactics were once necessary. Now they're life sentences. Name your tactic. Own its trigger. The moment you feel a defense snap into place, pause. Breathe. Ask, which childhood law am I still obeying? Awareness is not freedom. You can dissect your patterns, map your traumas, recite Freudian theory like scripture, and still find yourself trapped in the same cycles. Why? Because the unconscious does not yield to reason. It is a realm of shadows, governed by laws that defy logic. Think of it as trying to negotiate with a hurricane. Your insights are whispers lost in the storm. Freud knew this. He wrote, "The ego is not master in its own house," a humbling admission that the conscious mind is a guest in the psyche, not its ruler. The problem is resistance, not your resistance to change, but the unconscious's resistance to being changed. It clings to repetition compulsion like a dogma, not because it enjoys your suffering, but because the familiar, even the fatal, feels safer than the unknown. You can spend years in therapy untangling your childhood wounds, but the moment your partner's voice echoes a parent's disapproval, the unconscious hijacks the wheel. It doesn't care about your epiphanies. It cares about survival. And survival, to the unconscious, means keeping the status quo intact, even if that status quo is a slow-motion collapse. This is the paradox of healing. The more you think your way toward change, the harder the unconscious digs its heels. It's like trying to outmaneuver a chess master who's already plotted every move. Your insights become pawns in the game, absorbed into the defense mechanisms they were meant to dismantle. You say, "I won't repeat the pattern," and the unconscious smirks, steering you toward a partner who wears the same scent as your first heartbreak. You cannot reason with a ghost. Here's Freud's forbidden truth. The unconscious speaks only in symbols, dreams, and symptoms, never in solutions. To break the loop, you must bypass the mind's defenses entirely. You must speak the unconscious's language. Insight without ritual is noise. To reprogram your unconscious, you must speak its language, symbols, sensations, acts that bypass the mind's defenses. These are not exercises. They are incantations. 1. Dream incubation. Before sleep, plant a question in the fertile soil of your unconscious. Show me the pattern I'm condemned to repeat. Keep a journal by your bed. Upon waking, write before your rational mind stirs, raw, unfiltered, in the twilight syntax of dreams. The unconscious communicates in riddles. A locked room is your heart's isolation. A chase scene is your flight from intimacy. Your job is not to interpret, but to observe. Over time, motifs will emerge, recurring settings, characters, emotions that map onto your waking relational loops. What childhood relic surfaced in last night's dreamscape? 2. Role reversal dialogues. Stand before a mirror. Speak aloud to your inner child as the parent they needed. Then switch. Let the child answer as you, the adult. Listen. This is not affirmation. It's archaeology. The parent role forces you to articulate withheld nurturance. The child role channels buried rage. The unconscious registers the body's vibrations, the crack in your voice when you say, "I'm sorry I wasn't there," the tremor in your hands as the child screams, "You broke me." These dialogues rewire neural pathways by embodying the repair your psyche craves. Which sentence made your throat tighten? Follow that thread. 3. Boundary ritual. Write a letter to the archetype that haunts your attractions, the critic, the ghost, the savior. Detail every way it's poisoned your love life. Then, in a ceremonial act, burning, burying, dissolving in water, destroy it. The ritual is not for closure. It's a neural reset. Fire and water are the unconscious's mother tongues. They transmute intellectual understanding into somatic truth. As the paper blackens or disintegrates, visualize the archetype's hold on your desires dissolving. This act creates a psychic vacancy, space for new patterns to root. Which ghost did you just unshackle from your future? As we end this video, I need you to remember that you've spent lifetimes mistaking trauma's echo for love's voice. Not anymore, because this Freud's blueprint has shown you the child still holding the reins of your heart, the ancestral wounds still drafting your love letters. The exercises you've begun today are not solutions. They're tools to dissect the lies your nervous system mistakes for reality. The question isn't, can I change? It's, which version of the past am I willing to bury? I am not going to answer it for you, but I hope that for you it is everything you were conditioned to be. Now, act. Not just because you want to experience true love, but for sovereignty. Your sovereignty. Comment below. Which ghost's name have you finally learned to speak? Let this be your first vow of defiance. I will leave you with this final word. Unexpressed emotions never die. They're buried alive, and they'll come forth later in uglier ways.